In this tutorial, I want to take a closer look at constructor injection, in particular how Spring resolves arguments within the constructor. So if we go into our message printer, you can see that I've modified it a little bit. I've added a name attribute and a separator attribute, and I've also added a couple of arguments to the message printer constructor. So we can now pass in a name and a separator. The idea is that when we do the print message, it prints the name of the message of the day service, it then prints the separator, and then it prints the actual message. All these attributes are set up at constructor time, so we're using the constructor injection for this. One of the things we can notice already is in the application.xml file we now have a red cross, and this has occurred because I've modified the print message constructor. So let's open that application.xml up and have a look to see what the error is. Now Spring Tool Suite's validated this XML, and it's noticed that there's an inconsistency between the XML we have and the actual Java code. So let's hover on the red X. It says no constructor with one argument defined within our message printer class, and that's exactly right. We have a message printer class with 3 arguments defined. In fact, those arguments are now 2 strings and a reference to a basic message of the day implementation. So we need to add some extra constructor arguments here to cater for those 2 new parameters. So let's add those in. We can do control space constructor arg, select that. Then as before, we can do control space again. This time we're not passing in a ref, we're passing in a value, because the 2 new parameters are actually strings and they're treated as primitive types. So we can select value here, and then we type in the actual value we want to go in. So I'm going to actually put my printer service, and for the second argument my separator is basically going to be, add another value there, 2 greater than signs. Let's save that, see what happens. Okay, that seems to have removed our red cross. So what we're doing, we're passing in 2 strings, my printer service and the separator. So let's run that and see what happens. Go up to the client, the main method within the client, right click, run as Java application, and there you are, you can see my printer service greater than hello from the den. So now we have multiple constructor arguments. Sometimes there may be ambiguity as to the order in which the arguments get resolved. Typically they follow the order in which they're set. So for example, this constructor which sets the name of my printer service will go into the first argument on the constructor, which is name, and the second one, which is the separator, will be matched with the separator. And lastly, the basic message of the day object or reference will be set on that. But sometimes you can get ambiguity, particularly when the types are the same. For example, let's take this first one here, this first argument, and we can cut that and we can paste it there. So let's see what happens. Because it takes the order, you can probably guess what's going to happen is that that's going to come out first, that second, that third, which is exactly what it's done. Now there is a way within Spring that we can explicitly set the order in which these arguments are passed to the class at constructor time. And there's an attribute on the constructor arg which is called index. So let's have a look at that. If we do control space, it's actually the first attribute shows up, index. So we can give that a value of 0. In fact, in this case we want it the value of 1 because we want it to be the second one. And we get another one. Give that the value of 0 because we want that to come out first. And give this a value of 2. Let's save that a second. So what should happen now is that Spring will analyse this and it will say, oh okay, we want this guy to come in to be injected in first to the first argument, this guy to be injected into the second argument, and lastly this one to be injected into the third. So rather than going by the natural order, it's going on the order of this index. So let's run that and see what happens. And now we're getting everything injected in the right order. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial I'm going to start looking at how we can inject collections using constructor injection.